Back in the 80s, though, the way people think about climate change now, the people thought about the ozone layer back then. So I find it interesting. That probably was on Himrod's mind. Oh no, I saw this documentary the other day called Tank Girl. A bunch of kangaroos are going to show up. How are we going to protect the ozone layer? So when he's talking to this hyper-intelligent thing, ozone would be part of that conversation. It's interesting to think because the idea, did he die? Did a bomb actually fall on him and he got slotted into a reality? I implore you guys to go back and I've never done this before. I don't think I've ever done this on the show. I implore you guys to go back and listen to episode 242, The Multiverse Abides, because it's a really, really interesting episode, and I think it's a great companion piece to this one. It shows that the guy in that episode kept feeling that every time his memory got erased, every time he fell into another reality, but somehow he was able to make sense enough of it to tell us the story. This guy, this may be the only version he remembers, is as it's sorting him, he just remembers this conversation. But another interesting thing about these stories is finding parallels. Because when we look at the world of the paranormal, we want to find things that match, because they're already so bizarre. So if we can find person on one part of the world has this experience, and these things match, and you have person on this part of the world who has this experience, and these things match, and neither of these stories were popular at all. These are not the communion books. These are not episode of X-Files. These are two completely unrelated people on opposite sides of the planet experiencing the same events, which makes them have a little more credence. Very, very creepy story. Both of them have happy endings, but both of them, the people are faced with the reality of they might truly know what happens to you after you die. The tunnel of light may simply be a tunnel you through the multiverse. Who knows? But let's hop on back of Natty's back. You know what? We're going to give Natty's going to transform into a human. We're going to give them the keys to the Carpenter Copter. You can fly us around now. You can rest those little wings of yours. We are leaving behind Lebanon. We are headed to Hawaii. Dude, that sounds like a creepy nursery rhyme version. Is that an authentic Hawaiian song? You're like Jason Heard the first time. You don't have to say it again. And no, not only is it not a tropical song, it might be vaguely racist that you go into that song. Let's put on our leis, though, as we fly into Hawaii. Specifically, we're going to the island of Honolulu. Turn on invisibility mode and hit that button. We're going back in time to the mid-19th century. So 1800s, right? 1850. And there we're going to meet a family in Honolulu named the Kaimuki family, or Kamekuki family. How you pronounce it? Probably not, but that's how it's spelled. How did I say it? Kamekuki family. We're like, hey, Kamekukis, and they're like, hello, weirdos, all hopping out of a helicopter piloted by a bug, giant gnat. There's a father, there's a wife, two little kids, a normal family. And the patriarch of the family has this house built known as the Kamekuki house. A little Honolulu house. Everything's going fine there. But one day, for no reason, the father, they're Japanese by the way, I don't know if I said that, or if that name was self-explanatory, but anyways, one day, the father gets his katana, and his wife and his kids are sitting there, and he's like, kills them all, and then he buries them in the backyard. Chops them up, buries them in the backyard. And eventually people go, wait, hey, Kamekuki, where are your kids and your beautiful wife? And he's like, they're around. His eyes shifting from side to side. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, can I see him? And he's like, I don't know, do you have X-ray vision? His eyes shifting from side to side. What is X-rays, for one? It's 1850s, too. Do you have some sort of eye problem? Why are your eyes shifting side to side? And he goes, I can't think of a witty one-liner, so I'm just going to keep shifting my eyes side to side. Eventually, people call the cops because his family's missing, and it turns out that he did kill them, and they find the wife and one of the kids in the backyard, and they never found the body of his daughter. So that's just the start of the legend of the Kamekuki house. Part of the legend is afterwards, 60 years, the house stood abandoned, and then a lesbian couple moved in, but one of the lesbians started sleeping with a dude. And so then that started a bunch of trouble, obviously. And the dude got tricked into not being in love with the lesbian or something like that. So he came back and murdered the lesbians and killed himself in the house. And their bodies were never found. They just all went missing in the house, and everyone just assumed everyone got killed. So you have a little girl's body missing, could never find it in the backyard. You have 2 lesbians and this dude, they're all missing, but the implication was they were all murdered there. I guess someone was walking on the street one day, saw a bunch of people getting murdered, and he goes, I'll call the cops, and then he runs and he comes back and people aren't there. But apparently, they died too. Summer 1942, a family moves in, a single mom and her 3 kids. Now, this was reported in the newspaper. Very important detail to note. One day she calls up the cops, and they can't really hear what she's saying because there's a bunch of static on the phone, but they do hear her say, he's trying to kill my kids! And so the cops rush on down there, and the kids are all super scratched up. They're just laying on the couch. Oh, dude, I'm super scratched up. This sucks. I'm more scratch than man at this point. Just one big red line just standing there. Cops are oh, this sucks. And then, so there's 3 kids. 2 of them are laying on the couch, all ugh. And then one of them is flying around the room. Whoa. Reported in the newspaper, by the way. Kid flying around the room, and then starts getting thrown from wall to wall, and the cops are what are we supposed, how do you respond to that? Cops are grabbing the kid, but they can still feel the kid kind of being pulled away eventually. The kid does stop getting thrown, and they put the kid down on the couch, and then stuff starts flying around. Since whatever's here no longer has a kid to throw, I'll show you, I'll throw other stuff around, begins throwing books and lamps and pumpkins, whatever is available, at the kids, and hitting them in the head as the cops are standing there powerless. And then eventually 2 of the kids die on the scene. You're Jason, that's awful. You've been cracking jokes this whole time. This episode's full of dead children. 2 of the kids die at the scene. The 3rd one, the cops are go, 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 pushing pumpkins out of the way. Get away, watch out, cabbages, pushing those away. They throw him in an ambulance, but he dies on the way to the hospital. And the mom's besides herself, no, my children. And she actually blamed her husband for this, because if her husband had never left him in the first place, they wouldn't have been in this house and all this stuff. So anyways, now we jump ahead about 15 more years to the year 1957. This was also reported in the newspaper. These 3 girls, these 3 hot chicks are living at this house. It's college girls, right? And they start to hear a disturbing noise. Now, I don't know if they knew about, all the people getting murdered and the 3 kids flying around the room, but it's probably really cheap. They're in their house, partying, summertime in Hawaii, listening to these songs, 1957. No, it would have been Beach Boys and stuff. But anyways, they hear in between their parties and their nights of pillow fights and lovemaking, they occasionally will hear the sound of an Asian of an Asian man inside their walls. Now, I have to say this. I don't think I've heard ghosts. I've heard a couple ghosts or demons, whatever. I don't think I ever could have picked out their ethnicity. I don't think I've ever been that guy's from South Sudan. I don't think that, I find it weird that if you heard a ghost, unless it was speaking Japanese, I don't know if I could peg its ethnicity, right? Unless it was being overly stereotypical, it was an offensively bad ghost, I don't think I would be able to be that guy seems like he's from the Shanghai region of Mongolia. So, but apparently these women, this guy was either Mickey Rooney level stereotype Asian, or these girls just heard Japanese. We don't know. At that point, I would move. I can do with a floating teacup, or I can do with my lights flickering on and off. If I heard a man in my walls, I'm out. If I heard a woman in my walls, I'll be sticking around for a while. But man in my walls, no. Anyways, they eventually call the cops, and they didn't call the cops when there's an Asian man in their wall, by the way. They do not call the cops and say, we think there's a dude in here. They call the cops when stuff starts flying around. They're and the cops get there and they see stuff flying around, and some guy's the legends are true. The old veteran cops always told me about this beat. My father was at this house. Well, I guess it's only been 15 years. I don't think it'd be long enough for his dad to have done the case. Anyways, he's get in the cars, girl. We know how to deal with this. Get you out of the house. So the girls get in their car. Again, it was all reported in the news. The girls get in their car. The cops get in their car, and they're driving down the road. And he looks over and he sees the girl driving the other car start going, and she's grasping at her neck like someone's strangling her. Cop car skids to a stop, or maybe just slows down. I don't know. He jumps out. He runs over. He can't roll down the window because he's outside of the car, obviously. He smashes the glass with his baton, and he reaches in to help the girl, and he feels a coarse, strong hand wrap around his forearm. What the heck? He's fighting this force as she's continuing to get strangled. They can't open the doors. The girls are panicking, and then finally they do open the doors, and all the girls get out, and he's like, "Get in my car, lady." He's ready to just start shooting the invisible force in the car. They all jump in the police car. It doesn't start. No. This is all reported in the news, by the way. No, my car won't start. They all jump out of his car, and we got to get back in the car with the ghost. Now, at this point, they could just walk down the street, right? Like, at this point, I would just be like, I'm good. There's a Wendy's over there. I'm just going to sit over there. I'm going to get a Frosty. I'm not going to get back in the car with the strangle ghost. But they do. They all get in the car with the strangle ghost, and he's like, I'll drive this time. He's driving. And the girl who was previously the driver sitting in the front passenger seat, and he's driving down the road, the car door flies open, and she gets thrown out of the car, dies on the scene. No! That's the end of the legend of the Kamakuki house. Because if you go to this neighborhood in Hawaii, because it's a real neighborhood, the house itself doesn't exist. Now there's like a duplex built there. But if you go there, people will say, oh, don't say that duplex. That is where these stories took place. And you can find copies of these articles online as well, detailing those latest two events. The problem is, none of it's real. Now I didn't waste your time because I have an interesting theory about this. But the only thing we know for a fact is that there is a piece of land in a neighborhood in Honolulu where people believe a haunted house used to exist. The idea of the Kamakui family, or whatever you pronounce it, they don't seem to exist. There's no record of them existing. There was a house that was there, supposedly that was destroyed. Old-timers will say, there used to be a house there. Whether or not that was the actual name of the house, nobody knows. There's no record of a man murdering his family. Now, of course, men have murdered their families, but at this location, there's no proof of any of that happening. The lesbians moving in together and then dating, no proof of that whatsoever. But Jason, you kept talking about the news articles. There are news articles. They are copies of news articles, but there's no name of the newspaper they came from. There's no date when the newspaper was published. There's no byline for the author. It's just a photograph of a newspaper article with all of the information you can use to locate it taken out, to the point that it is written like a real article. They are very, very convincing, but when you get to officer and the name of the cop's name, it's redacted. When you get to the address of the house, it's redacted. When you get to the names of the girls, it's redacted. These articles are extremely convincing. Take it from a guy with an associate's degree in journalism. This is what news articles look like, but they're fake. There's an article on theoverlyopinionated.com called I lived in the most haunted house in Hawaii, and it talks about they moved into this house when it was a duplex, and they said every neighbor said, oh, be careful, that house is haunted. Like, the house doesn't exist anymore, but where that duplex is at. Everyone in the neighborhood had a story about the Kamakuki house. When this person, I forgot to write the name down, I apologize, but when the person, you can check out the article, it's real interesting. When the person was talking to other people outside of the neighborhood, they lived in this house, the story, oh, don't live there. So it had a legend of being haunted, even though there's absolutely no real proof that it's being haunted. And they said, I feel it was haunted. The person who wrote the article says, I feel like it was haunted, but I didn't feel like it was a sinister haunting. I did get woken up a couple times, the temperature was low, and it was kind of creepy. But they said they'd never felt menacing, haunting level stuff. So, Jason, why did you tell us a story about a haunting that you not only don't believe is true, but is almost demonstrably false? This is the interesting thing about this story. Why was this story created? Somebody made this story up. Somebody went through a lot of effort to make this story up. Writing news articles that would fool a journalism expert, myself, my associate's degree in journalism. They look like real articles. They're screenshotted like real articles. They're written exactly like a journalist would write these articles. This isn't creepypasta. This is a very well done mock-up. Which leads us to one of two things. It's a publicity stunt for a project, which could be the case. We saw that with the Lone Pine Devils. I covered them. It's a very, very well-known cryptid. Turns out the entire thing's made up. It was a marketing gimmick for a short film. But people today still talk about the Lone Pine Devils. I saw something about it on Reddit.